what if everything you think you know is, well, only half the story? In today's Explainer, we're diving into how the incredibly diverse lives of over 1 billion people are so often reduced to this tiny, narrow lens of conflict and fear. Now, to be clear right up front, we're not here to defend, we're simply here to understand. I mean, think about it. For years, the media has framed the word Muslim in this extremely fast-paced, noisy, and honestly pretty chaotic context. But let's take a step back. Can 1.9 billion people really fit into one neat little stereotype? Absolutely not. A life is never truly lived in headlines or hashtags or half-truths. Because right beyond all that noise, there are real human stories. We're talking about doctors saving lives in the ER, teachers shaping the next generation, and parents just out there chasing dreams for their kids. These are the quiet realities, the everyday moments of incredible resilience that, let's face it, simply do not make breaking news. Let's move into our first major theme, beyond the headlines, looking at the human reality of 1.9 billion people. So let's break this down a bit. The biggest myth out there is that Muslims are a monolith. But the reality? It's so much bigger than that. They span massive continents, vibrant cultures, and countless languages. From Indonesia to Morocco, from Mumbai all the way to London, there's literally no single way to be Muslim. Their true faith is so often found in quiet patience and kindness, which is entirely separate from the loud, flashy misinterpretations we're constantly bombarded with on TV. Next up, we have identity versus humanity, when a name becomes suspicion. Now, here is where it gets genuinely dangerous. When you look closely at the sources, they reveal this stark, undeniable double standard in media reporting. Just think about it. When a crime is committed by a Muslim, it somehow becomes a reflection of all Muslims everywhere. But when that exact same crime is committed by literally anyone else, it's just framed as an individual act. Why the massive double standard? You see, this isn't just everyday reporting. It's a calculated narrative that quietly strips people of their dignity and forces entire communities to constantly have to prove their loyalty. Which brings us to a pretty heavy question. Have we actually started measuring suffering by identity instead of humanity? It really makes you stop and reflect on why a victim's background seems to dictate our level of empathy. If a victim is, quote-unquote, like us, it's viewed as a massive injustice. If not, well, it's just the evening news. But honestly, does a mother's tear fall differently depending on her religion? Humanity should never, ever be filtered through these kinds of labels.
That leads us right into the erosion of justice, fast narratives, and bulldozer justice.
Okay, let's talk about due process. It's the foundational legal concept that everyone has the right to a fair hearing and, importantly, is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But recently, we've seen this really alarming rise of what's being called bulldozer justice. This is where punishment is dealt out, literally knocking down people's walls before a crime is ever even proven in a court of law. It's a massive shift, and it's heavily driven by our modern societal demand for immediate gratification. Sure, bypassing the courts might get some cheers from a riled-up mob, but what it actually does is destroy fundamental democratic protections for everyone. Think of it this way. When the law sleeps so power can wake up, injustice peaks. If the whole process is broken today for just one group, well, anybody could be its victim tomorrow. So we really have to ask ourselves, do we want fast justice or do we want actual justice? Moving on to our next section, tolerating the intolerable, the systems that enable global occupation. You see, global occupation isn't just some isolated conflict. It is a highly functioning system, and according to the sources, it relies on 4 main pillars. First, there's political protection, which happens through vetoes and alliances. Then you've got economic interests, driven largely by arms sales. Third is media narratives that selectively frame who is actually suffering. And finally, weak enforcement, which leads to completely toothless resolutions. These unchecked mechanisms are exactly what allow massive systemic injustices to persist all over the globe. But don't lose hope, because there is a clear roadmap out of this. Global injustices really only continue because they are tolerated by the public. Stopping them in their tracks requires informed citizens, strict economic accountability, and serious collective civic pressure. History has shown us time and time again that when everyday people unite, the systems are practically forced to respond. Which brings us to unmasking hidden costs, the price of progress and war. So there's this massive modern irony in our unquestioned narratives today. We're constantly told that cutting down forests for sleek, smart cities and huge highways is, concrete as progress. But the hidden cost there is severe ecosystem destruction. Bulldozing nature in the name of development without any sort of ecological balance is simply a slow form of self-destruction. As the saying goes, when a single tree falls, an entire ecosystem breaks. And taking that exact same environmental lens over to global conflict, the source material introduces a really striking concept: the heat tax. Because think about it, every missile launched doesn't just hit a physical target, it literally heats the atmosphere. War itself is a massive environmental crime. The heat tax proposes that nations starting wars should automatically be forced to fund Earth's cooling systems, things like carbon capture and reforestation. We don't just lose human lives in war, guys, we're quite literally losing the planet's future.
Now, for our final core section, question every narrative, reclaiming our perspective.
So how do we actually change all of this? Well, we start by asking better questions. Step 1, always put humanity first. Step 2, recognize your own personal biases. We all have them. Step 3, always ask why behind the narrative you're being fed. And finally, step 4, rely on facts over emotions. We have to stop consuming our information so passively and start demanding the full, unvarnished truth.
Because at the end of the day, a community is not its worst headlines. A religion is not its loudest misinterpretations. And humanity, it should never, ever be filtered through fear. Breaking these stereotypes isn't about defending one particular group. It is about fiercely protecting the truth.
Think. Question. Understand. Awareness is ultimate power here. Because when we finally see people exactly as they are and not just as we're told they are, we don't just understand them better. We actually become better ourselves. So the next time you see a fast, flashy narrative pop up on your feed,